podcast, we have productivity guru Ari Meisel. Welcome, Ari.
Thanks for having me, Majeed. It's always good to see you.
Um, Ari, I heard your story once that you had Crohn's disease, which is like nuclear diarrhea. That's a medical term. And then you only had an hour of capacity to be a entrepreneur, father, a husband, 1 hour per day, and you became the world's most productive guy with automations, and now you've emerged the productivity coach to many of the world's top business owners while raising 5 children, while on the school board in Princeton, New Jersey, while a local rescue squad EMT, and you got free time. Welcome to the show, Ari.
Thank you for having me. Gave me all warm and fuzzies there.
Wow. So a lot has changed since we worked together. I hired you back in pre-pandemic. So it must have been, I don't know, 2016, 2017, 2018. I was building my business and I hired you to help me automate, systemize, delegate. Less doing, more living was your message those days. And I like that. I like a business that is lean, mean, profitable while I get to have a great life. Really important to me. That's why I hired you. Then you wrote this book called The Replaceable Founder, where the business owner can get replaced. Can you explain what is a replaceable founder?
Yeah, so first of all, there's an important distinction, right, between replaced and replaceable, right? So I never want to replace anybody. It's a natural sort of byproduct sometimes, I think that happens. But the idea of becoming replaceable is that it's something we want at all levels of a business. We want people to constantly be looking at how they can replace themselves because if you can't be replaced, you can't be promoted, right? You become a bottleneck sort of naturally. And the one who needs to be replaced the bull the most is always at the top. The person who says, only I can do this thing. Nobody else could possibly do this, right? It has to go through me. And that limits your ability to scale and ultimately have that work-life integration that everybody always wants. So to become replaceable, we need to create systems and processes that replace the things that you do really well. And at some point, be able to delegate those things as well. But nowadays, we're more and more able to create things that are based on automations, based on AI and all sorts of stuff that don't even require people. So if we're in this mindset of constantly trying to replace ourselves, it's like a snake molting its skin. We have to be able to shed the old stuff in order to take on the new things. And entrepreneurs thrive on new things.
Speaking of new things, that AI is pretty exciting, huh?
Yeah, AI has been really a fascinating journey so far, and I use it daily. And it's actually, I would say it is one of the main reasons I'm able to take on so many of the different things I'm involved in. I'm involved in, as you mentioned, a couple. I'm the vice president of our local rescue squad. I'm on the board of our local Jewish center. I'm on a municipal committee for the Committee on Affordable Housing, Racial, Economic, and Social Equity for all of Princeton. And the school board as well, right? So all these things I wouldn't be able to keep track of, manage all the information at this point if it wasn't for a healthy dose of AI supporting me. So it's absolutely critical. And I still have, shockingly, I've been talking about this for I feel like years at this point. I still have clients who are like, yeah, I still really haven't dug in. I'm still like afraid to give it a try. So the people that are really using it to its full potential is a very small number.
I was recently speaking at an event with a very successful founder, a real estate investor who's running this big training company, doing all these events, and he's got a real estate portfolio and he's got a property management company and just quite a complex business life, very successful. And he proudly said on stage, he said, everyone's going AI. I'm going the opposite direction. I'm a people guy. We're a people company. We're people. And he's kind of like this proudly anti-AI. Like he might as well have had a whiskey and a cigar and like a good old home values. And everybody was like, yeah, we're anti-robots. We're pro-humans. And it was just this weird moment. I was like, huh, you know, in my mind, the AI is like as important as the internet. And it's just like the way the life is going to be. And if we don't figure out how to use it, we're just going to get left behind. And but this like visceral, emotional anti-machine was really palpable in this moment. And I bet you've been probably privy to some interesting conversations where people are, you know, their mindset's just not really seeing AI for what it can do for their business. What do you say?
Yeah, I continually find that so fascinating. So I feel like as a coach, and I'm sure that you deal with this too as a coach, I think one of the biggest things that any coach deals with is the level of resistance to change that any client that they work with might have, right? And for some it's no resistance, for some it is enormous. And so this is a really weird one to me because it there are a lot of situations where people might say like, "Oh no, I don't want to use that. I don't want to use that tool. This is just a fad, whatever." And it's like ego driven. There's a protective aspect to it, but there's certain cases where it's from such a place of such a lack of knowledge that it's almost like you want to just shake them and wake them up. And so AI is one of those. And what you said is correct. Yes, it's coming. It's the future. It is what it's going to happen. That's not the issue for me, because I've been dealing with this problem for over a decade, where I was dealing with automations, nothing to do with AI. When I created all these automations to deal with the hiring process at a former company I had, where I hired hundreds of people in with an automated process. People would always say like, "Oh, but you're taking out the human element. You're automating everything. You remove the human element." It's like, but what you don't seem to understand is that all the stuff that I automated, that's the thing that makes it so that at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, I can just pick up the phone and call a candidate and have a conversation because I have a question. I can do that because I'm not stuck in back to back to back interviews all day because I've automated that process. And it's the reason that in my coaching, which I do over Voxer, if somebody Voxes me, I do all my own sales, right, over Voxer, and I'm the one who answers. I don't automate that, right? I'm involved in all these things, all these different groups. I spend all this time doing things, but I still have the ability, and you mentioned it, free time, right? I have the ability to personally, as a human, deal with these things because all the other stuff is automated. So when people are like, "Oh, it's replacing human," it's like, no, if anything, it's distilling the thing that makes us human, because that's what should come out, because we can't automate the true human things. We're just making more time for them.
So what I'm hearing is the parts that require a human, you get to be more involved in those parts. And the parts that honestly at this point don't require a human, they're getting automated so that you, the human, are in fact engaging as a human as much as you want to.
Can I give you like one of the purest examples of this I've
Yeah.
had in recent years? So I gave a talk a couple of years ago to an organization that was all dentists. Okay, it was like 300 dentists in this group. And anybody who's been to the dentist recently, you may have seen this because it's a really common thing among dentists, particularly just because of the nature of the appointments and whatnot. A lot of dentists nowadays will end their day by calling all of the clients, all the patients that they saw that day, right? Hey, it's
Mhm.
Dr. So-and-so. Just want to see how you're feeling, see if you have any questions, check in. It's a really nice thing, but it's also completely unsustainable, right? Because dentists might see 12, 15, 20 patients in a day, possibly. And like the majority of the guys in this room, the people in this room raise their hands to be like, yeah, I do that practice. And, most nights I get to do it. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have to and it takes them like a half an hour. So I said, how many of you do this practice? And it was at least 60% of the room. And it's like, and okay, now when you call, the majority of the time, how many of you get voicemail? Everybody raised their hand for that, right? And I said, okay, cool. And then how many of you raise your hand if you would say that people call back more than 10% of the time? And nobody raised their hand. Like, okay, still valuable. They received the call. They probably felt like, oh, that was really nice, whatever. So I was like, there is a tool called Sly Broadcast, which is not an auto dialer, it's ringless voicemail. So basically, the person just looks like they missed a call and they have a voicemail. You pre-record it and it goes to that. And actually, now with AI, you can actually personalize the names in it and stuff. I said, so you can do that. You can pre-record that forever. You can pre-record 5 or 6 if you want, and then your PA, your assistant, whoever, can then send those out at the end of the day to all those people, requiring zero amount of your time. And it's not like they can pick up because it goes right to voicemail. And of course, and I was like, before anyone says like, oh, but then it's not personal. It's not, it's like, yes, it is. You're achieving the exact same result. The person feels like you called. It's your voice. They're getting the call from you. They feel like, you care, like you checked in. If they want to call back, they still can. And guess what? If the 1 in 100 patients actually calls back, now you have the time to answer.
Great solution. Great idea. One word that you use every time I speak with you is asynchronous versus synchronous. And I end up explaining this at least 3 times a week. The concept of asynchronous versus synchronous, because you have discovered how to scale and create freedom through this asynchronous thing. Would you like to explain what's the difference between asynchronous and synchronous and how you use it in your practice?
Absolutely. Thank you. So what we're doing right now is synchronous, meaning like we're live, right? So whatever I say, you can, readjust your chair, you can respond, I can see your eye movement, like we can read off each other and we can speak to each other in real time, which has a place. Podcast interviews, I would argue, is probably one of those places. I have done asynchronous interviews, but this is one of those places where, yeah, it makes total sense to do it this way. Asynchronous is the opposite, right? And all of you, everyone who's listening, does something asynchronous with their communication right now. They just might not think about it that way. Email is asynchronous, right? You send an email at 11:55 at night, right before you go to bed. Somebody else, maybe they get it at 1 in the morning because they're up. Maybe they don't get it till 8 in the morning. Then they respond 2 hours later, and then you get it 2 hours after that. That's asynchronous. Text messaging is asynchronous. I use a platform, a tool called Voxer, which is primarily a voice communication app. It's kind of like a walkie-talkie, like the old Nextel chirp chirp ones. But if the person's not there, you can listen to it later. A lot of things that do that with voice. Voxer has some unique features. But what I push clients to do and what I push teams to do is that the majority of the time that you are spending synchronously face to face with somebody, the majority, I would argue, can be and should be done asynchronously. And what you're saying when you allow something to be done asynchronously is you're saying, I want to communicate with somebody when they're at their best. Because if you say to somebody, we're not live, right? You can respond when you want. They're not going to just take days and days and days unless maybe something really bad is going on in their life or their business or they're really busy. And you wouldn't want them to be face to face with you anyway. If you and I are going to be in a brainstorming session and Majeed, you got it's well, we're the same time zone, but let's say you're not. Let's say you were, you know, in another time zone and you had a bad night, but you and I have an 8 a.m. meeting scheduled. The odds of, and I'm like rare to go, like, hey, okay, Majid, like, let's do this. I'm ready to go. And you're like, yeah, just let me just finish this cup of coffee. Like, that's a very minor example of how most team meetings go. And then you think you take more than 2 people, 3, 4, 5 people. The odds of those 5 people being in the same headspace, the same body space to be able to like function at their best is almost impossible. So with asynchronous, I do all of my coaching, except for a very, very, very small percentage of it is done asynchronously. I have clients I speak to every single day, sometimes for just a minute, and I can listen when I'm able to. And sometimes I'll listen to multiple at the same time. I can listen at multiple speeds so I can get through it quicker. And then I can think about the perfect answer for that person because I'm not put on the spot, basically. You're gonna
I've
say
got a
something?
question about this
Yeah,
asynchronous coaching.
yeah.
So I can see how it works when a client has a question. They ask the question. When you're ready, you provide the answer.
Hmm.
Some coaching is designed to guide people towards a certain outcome and may require the coach to, offer some direction or apply some assignment or some accountability. So, is your coaching purely like a question answering service, or do you provide some sort of structure towards an outcome?
It's a good point. So no, there is a structure. Um, I would say for a lot of it, a lot of clients, it's I'm like the CEO or the coach in the pocket, right? So they can use me as needed. So there's both sides of it. So I'll give you both sides. On the push side, from them, right? What I think is really been really interesting from the effectiveness of the coaching, right? So instead of us having our Wednesday noon meeting every week for an hour, where on Friday morning you have a blow up fight with your partner, right? And then because of that, you get into it with an employee and you fire that employee, right? So now is it better for you to just take that home with you over the weekend, right? And mess up a whole bunch of other stuff. And Wednesday comes and you don't even remember why you were so mad. You know what happened, but you don't even remember the feeling of why you were so mad. And something else came up on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But you get there Wednesday morning and we have our appointment and we've got our hour scheduled or whatever. But you really just needed 3 minutes at that time to get the answer to be able to move on. Or they have the blow up with their partner. They walk out of that meeting, they vox me, cursing, yelling, like telling me everything that happened in that moment, what they're feeling. They get it off their chest. Then I respond to them, and then they don't fire that employee because they have that interaction. And then they can move on to the next issue. So in that way, it's been so much, much more effective. But so what I also do, there's two things I do in terms of structure. One is that I have this thing I created called the Ultimate KPI, created that several years ago, which is a systematic way of measuring your journey towards replaceability. So basically what I have clients do is they list out 20 things that they do on a regular basis, and then they look at 16 of those things that in a year's time they will no longer be doing at all. And then we track their replaceability using that every month, quarter, whatever it needs to be. But essentially it's like, all right, and what I really enjoy with that is there's some that are just so easy. It's like, yeah, just sign up for this service, hire this VA, whatever it is. But then there's ones where it's like, I'm the voice of the brand, like how do I, and then we work towards those things. So there's that structure. And then additionally, I stopped doing my podcast, I guess 3 years ago or so after my 500th episode. I'd been doing it for 8 years and I just was ready to do other things. So now what I do is basically a private podcast every week, which is delivered over Voxer to all of my clients. And then I have a separate one that I do. I have a smaller community that's just on Voxer. So those are completely unedited, completely raw. It's me hitting the button while I'm driving, walking, whatever, talking about what I'm dealing with today, what happened, what I saw, some idea I have. And those are inevitably sort of there to spark questions or thoughts from clients who then we interact with. So it's a little bit of both. And then,
Okay,
oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
remember the Voxer broadcast. You were doing it daily when I was working with you.
Hmm. Yeah,
And I get the idea now. Now I'm remembering the idea that you're communicating this message, call it a private podcast, to add value through storytelling, entertainment, insights, sharing wisdom, but also to inspire questions, like, or inspire, like, maybe we can work on this, or I thought of it as helping me understand better ways to think about my
yeah,
business problems. Yeah, we were
yeah,
talking before we press record, and you were telling me how a lot of your clients love how you just challenge the way they think because they're often already very successful, but you come in and help them think different and challenge them in different ways.
yeah. And I think that sometimes success is like your worst enemy in that way, right? Because if it's working, you're going to keep doing what's working,
Yeah,
and keep
yeah.
doing more and more of it, right? So that's where we just go further rather than farther, right? And which is an important distinction. Do you ever see the movie Finding Forrester?
I have to admit, I don't know the difference between further and farther, and I also
Okay.
haven't seen Finding Forrester.
It's a really cool moment actually where this student challenges a teacher in that way. But so farther is a measure of distance. Further is a measure of degree, right? So further is we go deeper into the subject, we go deeper into this topic, whatever it might be, where farther is just moving along the line essentially. So somebody can go farther in their career, or they can go further into something that they're really, like an expert in or something like that, for example. So, and it's an important distinction, right? Because, like I said, somebody who's making a lot of money has had a few exits, whatever that is, they can keep doing that. They can go over and over again. But at some point, it's like, why are they doing that? What's the point? It inevitably loses excitement to some extent. So now it's like, well, let's dive a little deeper and see like why we're actually doing this. What's driving that? What is the itch that we are trying to scratch?
Gotcha. All right, I've got speaking engagement related question for you, since we are, after all, a speaking engagement business over here, helping
Yeah.
people. So from getting the speaking engagement, winning the speaking engagement, getting invited to speak, to all the little micro steps you might take leading up, whether it's packing and travel, checklists, or the little things you might do at an event, like setting up a table with cards or a QR code, through to all the things you might want to do during a speech and all the follow-up activity that might maximize your leveraging that speaking engagement to either acquire clients or get more speaking opportunities, or even leveraging the speaking engagement for social media purposes to repurpose the content and make sure it gets clipped and distributed and all that. What are some of the tips you could share to speakers that are speaking on stages that are looking to build their brand and get more clients, that you think might be helpful?
I'm glad you said some because every one of those, I was like, oh my God, there's like 50 things I want to say about each one of those.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
so one of the things that I used to do, and I'm recognizing you are the expert here. So if there's something I'm going to suggest that you think doesn't make sense, please call me out on it.
Sure.
So one of the things I used to do, and I have spoken, gosh, I think I've spoken in like 20 different countries at this point, uh, and all sorts of EO groups and YPO and everything in between. I've probably done, I don't know, 200 or 300 maybe like in person on stage talks, and everything from 12 people in a room to my biggest was 5,000 in one room. One of the things I often like to do is create a unique web page and video for specific that specific talk. I started doing this when I spoke on the Fortune Summit in Europe, and so I spoke in Amsterdam, Spain, and Romania over the course of a week. And I got the idea while I was there, actually. So basically, the video, and I wish I had AI at that point because I could have localized the language actually, which would have been really cool. But a really simple idea, which was just like, hey, Amsterdam, like, thanks so much for having me today. I really enjoyed it, and I'd love to be able to connect with anybody who has any questions. Reach out here, and there'll be a link below or whatever it is. And then when I spoke, I would say, and I have an amazing short URL. So I have less.do,
Mm.
right? So it's a Dominican Republic domain name.
Okay.
So which is amazing. And then you can use a service like short.cm to use your own domain name as a short URL generator like Bitly. So people could go to less.do/Amsterdam, or less.do/Spain, and it would take them to a web page with that. It was like a funnel basically. It would take them to that web page with the video, and
I
then
missed the part. Why do I need you got the less.do/Spain, but what's the bit.ly part for?
so less.do is just a domain name, but
Right.
you need something that creates the short URLs and manages them essentially, right? I mean, I guess if you wanted to, you could go in and create a specific web page every single time, but
So
that's
you forward less.do/Spain, you forward it to bit.ly/12345 6.
no. So I use a service called short.cm, which is
Okay.
basically the kind of service that would run a Bitly.
Okay.
So short.cm, the website's pointed there, and then it can generate unique URLs very quickly. You can change them. It'll do QR codes. You can put expirations on them, all that kind of stuff. So it's just a
So
service that provides a sort
short.cm
of
creates a link.
mhm.
And are you sending people to that link, or are you sending them to less.do/Spain?
less.do/Spain, that's basically uh, the domain name server is redirected to short.cm. So it looks like less.do/Spain, but short.cm is providing that backend.
Okay, okay. And then which leads to a page. And did you build that page on your did you build a page on the web page?
Yes. So then that was just like I think it was on WordPress. Yeah, it was on WordPress. So then it would just be a new page with that slug, whatever, and then you put the video in and that's it. It would take
So the
minutes.
short.cm is just providing you some insights on the traffic.
That and also like I can expire it. I can also make
Oh,
it
I see.
I could make it geographic dependent if I wanted to. So only people there, you can localize the language with it, that kind of thing. So
Very cool. Okay,
it
great
just
idea.
yeah. Yeah. So it serves as that intermediate. It's kind of like when people put a link in an email, you could put a direct link, or you can use one of those services that tracks the analytics a lot better.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the idea. So that was one thing, is those videos, and those were really great, because again, it's personalized, and and also that was a very easy thing to automate at some point, where it was like, I make the video, put it in a Dropbox folder. Now it creates the URL, it creates the web page, and that's it. That was simple. Uh, the next one, and this was, you could do this anywhere, I guess, but I was doing this more in US talks, was there was a service called, um, I'll have to look it up, but it's an SMS, a short SMS service, right? So it's like text, Ari to this number. So that was, I couldn't exactly tell you when I would use one versus the other. It was like based on the kind of crowd it was. Like I gave a talk to this, it was called Apex, I think. It's the largest agriculture conference in America. So it's all farmers. And not that they're not high tech per se, but a lot of them in the room, at least that I saw, had like flip phones, So it's like, just text this word to this number, and that made more sense than saying go to this web page.
Okay.
But that would also be personalized, right? So depending on the event. So it's like, hey, it was great to see you at this event. Like, let me know. It's just those little things I feel like made people more apt to respond.
Okay.
Because, and I have a unique challenge that a lot of people don't have to deal with, which is that because of what I do with automation and outsourcing and all sorts of stuff, I have to convince people that they're actually talking to me, because they'll be like, hey,
Sure.
Ari, it's AI or Ari's assistant. It's like, no, 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 it's really me. Which is why Voxer has been so useful, because it's voice. And I mean, could now clone that, but on the fly, it's a little harder to do that believably. So that's a big one. The other one now is Voxer. So Voxer came into this game a little bit later, and I have voxwithra.com now. And
Hmm.
that's the thing that I would tell your users to go to as well. So that goes to a YouTube video I recorded years ago, which is me walking down the street explaining what asynchronous communication is, what Voxer is, how I use it. It says, hey, get in touch. And it's when I started doing that, it was so incredible, because you go from sales calls where you're doing, 45-minute sales call that's booked in your calendar, you're doing it back to back, and they're exhausting, and hopefully you have a good close rate, to I get a random message from somebody on a Sunday morning for 2 minutes saying, hey, I saw your video, heard about, like, this is my name. I don't know how this Voxer thing works. And then a couple hours later, I respond. And a few hours later, they respond. And then the next day, they sign up for the same high ticket coaching service. And we've exchanged 9 minutes of audio over the course of 28 hours. It's fascinating. And then they're on the platform already. They're already on Voxer, and that's how we do coaching. It's like, all right, now I'm just going to move you over here, and we start going. Um, and again, this is an example of how all the automation, all the outsourcing, all the things have enabled me to have the time to be able to have those conversations. Because in a way, that's like the best selling point, right? So somebody can Vox me and say, like, this is my situation. And I can say to them, you should get my $97 course, right? Or no, you're really a good candidate for coaching, like, and this is how it works. And I can do that in a scalable way. It really makes one-on-one scalable is what it does. Sorry. So that's another thing for speaking. And then I also eventually had a process in Process Street that we had for when I would do a talk, how we would promote it beforehand, the logistics of the packing, all that stuff. I always wanted to bring like some camera equipment with me, basic stuff. And then one more thing I'll mention, which is Opus.ai. I don't know if you've used that at all. So Opus Clips. So it's one of the best, I think, AI tools out there for taking a long form video and turning it into a bunch of like TikTok clips, essentially, with the captions and everything. And
Yeah.
it's gotten better and better and better. But it's so good, I think, that I could have I could do a talk and have videos up on TikTok like that night, because we
Yeah.
just take it and put something out there.
Yeah. Well, you taught me about automation doesn't have to be a software, it can actually be a human if
Hmm.
you put it into the process. And in fact, my podcast process that you're in the middle of right now is one of my favorites. So what I have is I sent you a calendar link that had podcast with Majeed in it. You picked a time, you filled out information. There's one thing that's a little bit like duct tape, but it says, please email
I saw
your
that.
picture to my assistant and your social media links because I couldn't figure out how to get Calendly to accept a picture file, and I didn't want to create a whole type form that leads to a Calendly. So I just email my assistant. So now my assistant, so I press record on Zoom when we start talking. As soon as I'm done, Zoom emails my Gmail that there is a podcast recording on the cloud. That triggers a Gmail filter that forwards the email to my assistant. My assistant can then grab the information from my calendar, Calendly, look for the email from you, publish it on podcasting. And we recently, 3, 4 months ago, maybe, added this next step, which is gangbusters. So what used to happen is I would send you an email that says, or she would send you an email that says your podcast is live. It's on Apple Music. It's on Libsyn. It's on YouTube. Here's the links. Here's a graphic. I think she goes into Canva and makes a graphic, your face, my face, promote the episode. We promote it on my social media. But the next step, which is Opus Clip.
Mm-hmm.
We run the thing through Opus Clip. In 1 second, we've got 30 viral clips with subtitles and AI generated B-roll. And my assistant in the Philippines, this might be inefficient, but I'm paying an individual to probably maybe be done by software, but she posts 3 clips a day on all of my platforms.
Yeah.
And when it's on Instagram, she'll tag you as a collaborator. So you'll get a bunch of collaborator posts. And what I love about the Instagram collaborator feature is that you don't need to come up with the title. You don't need to come up with the hashtag. You don't need to tag anybody. You don't need to do anything. All you need to do is click approve, 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 approve. And so
Yeah.
we're
I
going to
love it.
post on. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, and so that's a good point, right? So it's not, I mean, if the assistant's doing it well, that's great, until it's not, and then that's when you can deal with it. But yes, as I've said, as you alluded to, right, automation just means that you're not doing it really,
Yeah.
and that you can set it and forget it.
Well, as you were sharing about the pain of back-to-back Zoom sales calls, I do have that.
Mhm.
I've got Zoom sales calls, and the close rate is not high enough for me to love getting on these calls. Um, and different marketing methods I'm using. Actually, this is a really cool one. There's a guy called Troy Erickson. Shout out to Troy Erickson. You're going to love this, Ari. He developed a process of subscribing to people's newsletters with a bot. So you know how email newsletters have a subscribe button on websites. And
Mhm.
he can say, I only want to subscribe to doctor websites in California or all doctor websites across the United States. And there's like 10,000 of them. And he can even tell his bot, I only want you to subscribe to the ones that are using Active Campaign, or only the ones that are using Keep or Kajabi, right? So the bot goes out and subscribes to 10,000 emails. All right. All those newsletters send a welcome email. Okay. Now his bot replies to the welcome email with my email copy. And my email copy says something like, hey, I subscribed to your newsletter and I think you'd be a great expert speaker. Are you interested in getting on more stages and becoming a better public speaker? Is that of any interest to you? Since I'm subscribed to your newsletter, I just thought you might be interested, right?
Mhm.
And these people open up their inbox and it says RE colon in the subject line, their email address, and they go, oh, my email. So one of my faithful subscribers has sent me an email. And there are just so many benefits to this. There's some psychological benefits to the positioning. There's spam avoidance, spam detector avoidance, because it's like coming from their email. It's great. So shout out to
Yeah,
Troy Erickson. Cool little marketing automation.
yeah, that's a neat move.
So those people are booking appointments in my calendar, and I'm taking a lot of sales calls. And my current set of beliefs tells me that if I said go to a Voxer page and tell me what you would like to be a speaker about and what kind of speaking engagements, I would lose them.
Okay,
So the question is, what would you do with my business to eliminate sales calls?
why do you think you would lose them if they went to Voxer?
It's not a strong enough relationship. They don't have a relationship with me. They don't know who I am.
Mhm.
Uh, they they didn't really have the buying intent when they opened up the email. It's just maybe sparked a curiosity. Um, so that's my answer.
Okay. And your email is a written email, I'm assuming, right? As many emails are talking
Yes,
about getting on a sales call.
yes.
Okay. So, Majeed, expert speaker, do you think you look better on video or in text?
Oh, I'm fantastic on video.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So slightly different angle, but right, when I tell people go to voxwithari.com, it takes them to a minute and a half YouTube video of me, and you get me and how I am and who I am and how I talk and everything. And then those people might reach out. I have a very high close rate because, but I don't get that many leads, right? So, you your videos are great, and I've always known that, and I've known you for a while. Like you come across much better visually and audio, and so there probably should be some sort of a video in there so that they want to keep talking to you rather than writing with you.
Okay, that gives me two ideas.
Good.
One, one is to share with you that I have been using Loom's new AI
Mm.
feature.
Yeah.
I can swap out a word for a name.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I I filmed a 8-minute Loom video, uh, and I can change the first words to say, "Hey, Ari Meisel," and I'm sending it to people before they get on a call with me, giving them lots of information about me and the program
But
and
after they booked.
after they booked. So that's thing number one. Thing number two is I heard about this from someone, I've never used it, which is like kind of like a choose your own adventure navigating video chat where
Video
like
ask,
you would get what's it called?
videoask.com.
Right. So I would say, hey Ari, got a few questions for you. I'd love you to answer
Yeah.
before we book our call. And then you kind of go through, and I'm not sure if the interface is like a two-way video or if it's more like a answer questions, but that would be me coming across on video. You ever use that with any
Oh yeah. Love
yeah,
video ask. So video ask
video
I've mainly used it to for recruiting processes. So that's how I do all the interviewing that I do for the rescue squad and how I did it for a couple other organizations as well. It's amazing for interviews, right? So you have a video of me, I ask a question, and then you respond with a video. It's fantastic. I love too, like that people don't think that you can tell when they're reading off their screen. Like you get it's interesting how much more authentic people are sometimes when they're not synchronously in front of you, uh, or how their true self comes out, rather. So
oh, so
you
you're getting video inputs from these applicants through Video Ask.
Yeah, so they're responding with a video of themselves, and you can do it one question at a time. You can do whatever you want. You can do it audio only too, but I don't like that feature. So also what I like for the rescue squad, for example, the video questions alternate between me as vice president and a woman who is one of our captains. So I'll ask a question and then she'll ask a question. And I just think that that sort of, it's like a nice interplay in a way. So it's not just me like boom, boom, boom. They get two different kinds of people. It also gives them a little bit of a sense because we both filmed it separately. I filmed it like in the office of the squad. She filmed it in front of an ambulance. Like it just gives you like a bit more of a flavor, I feel like, for who we are, how we walk and talk kind of a thing. Um, and so yeah, the choose your own adventure aspect, so you can build logic into those, right? So depending on so sorry, not to sidetrack. So when ManyChat came out, right? ManyChat was really big, still is for some people, but one of the challenges that I was having in our sales process was that we had a really good product for people who were doing 100,000 to 300,000 in revenue, another really good product for people doing 300,000 to a million, and another really good product, which was coaching for people who were doing a million and up at the time. Really hard to differentiate that. I mean, you can ask a question, of course, but it was really hard to really differentiate that because we didn't want to say that. We didn't want to be like, well, you're making this much, this is the thing you need, because of course there might be someone who's making 200,000, they want to do coaching, but probably not a good candidate. So ManyChat would allow you to sort of take people through that journey in a way and qualify them. But now with Video Ask, again, it feels so much more personalized, even though they know it's pre-recorded. But I feel like as a coach, again, as a speaker, a person who's selling speaking too, like your ability to show you and your personality is so important because I know that there's 1,000 other people who do what I do. There's 1,000 other people who do what you do. And what ultimately makes us unique is our presence, I think, in a lot of ways, right? And the only way to show that is really through video.
That's a great insight. I have fantasized about the automatic many chat that leads people to a sales page, and I wake up in the morning with my high ticket new client. And I say, "Who the heck is this guy?" But what you've given me here is help me remember that video is I have a strong advantage with video.
Yeah.
So putting video into my sales process before they get on my calendar, I think it's going to help a lot. All right, I know you got another call to go, but quick plug for Ari for mayor. Ari's uh, going to be the future mayor of Princeton, New Jersey. Ari, why do you want to be the mayor of Princeton, New Jersey?
Well, thank you. We'll see. So that's in 4 years is the next term. But yes, that is the plan. It's so I running for the school board was the first time I've ever had like a political campaign, and it was a really interesting process. It was quite competitive, and I got on thankfully, and it's been really good. I like challenges. I like things that are new. Running a political campaign is a long game in a lot of ways, and I think it's an interesting intellectual challenge. The actual position itself in Princeton, the town council has a lot more power than the mayor, and that's something people keep saying. Why don't you run for town council? It's like because I want to be mayor. I think it's a really interesting door opener. It's a really interesting platform and a place where I can connect with a lot more people and help a lot more people and have just a really big impact. I think that the example of like the town council, we have some really great council members and they get a lot of stuff done, but I think a lot of people don't really know what they're doing or how that happens. They're like the unsung heroes in some ways, whereas the mayor has a very public facing role and again, ability to connect people. I think one of my unique talents has always been connecting dots, right? So somebody tells me a story, somebody explains a problem, I can usually connect a solution with a problem in a way that they might not have been able to earlier. And I think that that's something particular that I might be able to do is the office of mayor.
Ari, I know you'll make an extraordinary mayor. You have my vote. You have my vote, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right, great having you on the Expert Speaker Podcast. Thank you for all your wisdom, and stay tuned for AI generated clips posted automatically through a series of automations. Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much,
me.
Ari.
Good to see you.
You too.